So let me get into it. So there's some people. Okay, let me bring it out first. I'm just going to say the fucking name. There's a certain legal schmiegel out there. I think you know who I'm talking about. The person who calls himself the Big Bird, unironically. This motherfucker went out here and said there's no way to collect against these guys. Not only is he a pussy, he's fucking wrong. Okay? California cuck status. So let's talk about some of the ways we could potentially go after him. Because here's what you do. As a lawyer, you try to come up with arguments to make these motherfuckers pay. So here's where you can go. Now, this is kind of hard to read, guys. So I know it's going to be hard for you guys to read, but because it's kind of light. I'll try to zoom in, but I'm going to read it out to you guys. So just listen up. This is from the Texas statutes. So it's very hard under Texas law to claim for police fuck-ups, but it is possible if there's the action of an employee while responding to an emergency call, reacting to an emergency situation, if the action is in compliance with the laws, or if the action is not taken with conscious indifference or reckless disregard for the safety of others. So what this says is that these are situations where you can or can't make a claim. That says if you have conscious indifference or reckless disregard to the safety of others, you can pursue a claim in Texas. And I think this does rise to a reckless disregard for safety. A reckless disregard for safety, because they should have known and they failed to follow many of their different procedures. Now, does that mean that 100% liability is on the police? No, it can be portioned out to the school, to the police, to all those responsible. But certainly, they were way out of line where they should have been. Reckless disregard, I think, would be an easy standard for a juror to find. And to not let it go there is kind of pushing us under the table. Here's the second way they could collect. And this is a real way they could collect. And I haven't heard any other lawyer talk about it because guess what? Most of them haven't dealt with this. But you know what? I have. Every state has the ability to authorize what are called special acts of legislation. Sometimes they do funky shit. I talked about on my channel the special act of legislation for Disney in Florida that allowed them to create their own city that can build nuclear power plants, that can do whatever the fuck they want, and is immune from taxes. That's a special act of legislation, something that they bring up and they do for a special scenario. You can also do that for liability. You can say, in this case, we are specifically authorizing claims. We are specifically authorizing claims for this because this is something that needs justice. And that's something that Texas can do. Texas can do. And Sam, I'm going to get to this argument here that SCOTUS says cops have no obligation. So here's the thing. People say, oh, but Andrew, all these cases say cops have no obligation to help you. Well, look at this over here. This is one of the cases. This is the Winnebago one, right? The Winnebago case. There are many cases like this. This is just one example. And right here, in this case, this is a stream of cases. A stream of cases. Thank you. And Don, you brought it up right now as I pulled it up, right? Parkland, the Broward cases. They tend to say there's no obligation for the police not acting. Well, here's the thing. First of all, a lot of those come out of domestic violence situations, which are factually different. They don't come up with the police not following their own policy and procedures. That's more along the lines of a reckless disregard. I would say that is something that should be able to pierce that. Because if the police have already engaged in doing something, they should do something competently, right? So they were already responding. So in this way, I would not look at it as a police inaction. I would take it as an action that they grossly fucked up on. It wasn't because the police didn't choose to respond. For example, in the case of the Winnebago case, it was because they didn't respond when they knew somebody was a domestic abuser. They didn't respond. They didn't arrest him, so he killed somebody. This isn't that situation. They're already responding. They're there. They just aren't following their policies, their procedures, and they're fucking up left and right. So this, I think, should be looked at through a different lens. But even so, let me give you this. Let me give you the real way. This is the real reason that we should hold them accountable. It's because we can and do change the law. The law has and the law must continue to change. And particularly in the United States, we have a problem with these gun-free zones. And I know there's people out there, including fucking trolls in the chat, that would love for the whole country to be a gun-free zone. Well, I'm going to tell you one thing, buddy. Number one, that shit ain't happening. And number two, if you think illegal guns don't get in, look at the countries that ban guns. You just had a person in Japan assassinating with a homemade gun the former PM. If you think you're not going to get a gun in to America, you are smoking crack. If you can always get access to illegal weapons if you want them in the United States of America, if they can't stop somebody at the border, if they can't stop human smugglers, you think they're going to stop somebody smuggling in a gun? Get fucking real. Gun-free zones are bullshit. And here's the other thing. If they want gun-free zones, the law should change. Here's how the law should change. I'm going to tell you right fucking now. In every gun-free zone, the police should have an active, affirmative duty to defend. If they fail to do that, that's on them. Yeah, you'll see the police acting right real quick. Because you know who pushed for these gun-free zones? The fucking cops. The ones that took the guns out of your hands so nobody could defend themselves in that scenario. So if a teacher had a gun in that situation, they would have the balls to try to protect their students, unlike those fucking police officers. But instead, you're putting your life in the hand of a fucking cuck who's going to sit outside for 77 minutes. And say no responsibility? No. No. They should have an affirmative duty in those gun-free zones to defend those people in those gun-free zones. If they fail to do that, that's on them. That's how the law should change. It isn't like that nowadays. That is not the law. But the law can and does change. And it needs to grow a pair of fucking balls. And that's my take on this.